Perfect. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim and Assalamu alaikum. My name is Arif Shahid and I am the founder and president of the Pakistani Students Association Coalition. Before we officially and formally begin, I would like to briefly explain what the PSA Coalition is. The PSA Coalition is a beacon of unity, a bridge connecting Pakistani students and Pakistani student organizations or Pakistani student associations across the US. In these times of profound uncertainty back in Pakistan, the PSA coalition has risen as a pivotal platform for both Pakistani students here in the US and in other parts of the world to engage in meaningful and constructive dialogue. Our coalition is not only debating and discussing Pakistan's most pressing and pertinent issues, but is also celebrating Pakistan's vibrant diversity and culture. Our mission is very clear: to foster unity, to inspire, to promote Pakistan's culture, and to engage in productive discussions that and try to understand the role we as students can play to propel our country towards a future marked by stability and prosperity. Today's session, titled Reimagining Pakistan, Awam or Public at the Heart of Change, featuring the Honorable former Prime Minister of Pakistan, Mr. Shahid Khaqan Abbasi, and the former Finance Minister, Dr. Miftah Ismail, is a clear demonstration of our commitment to understanding and navigating the challenges our beloved country is presently facing, and to exploring pathways to peace and prosperity and recognizing the role the public and students can play. Now, without wasting further time, I'm going to hand over the floor to our Director of Operations, Lina, to formally begin and introduce our guests. Thank you.
Thank you, Arib. Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and welcome once again to Reimagining Pakistan, Awam at the Heart of Change with Mr. Shahid Khaqan Abbasi and Dr. Miftah Ismail. Mr. Shahid Khaqan Abbasi has served as the Prime Minister of Pakistan from 2017 to 2018 and was a key figure in the Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz PML-N party throughout his political career. He is an alum of the University of California, Los Angeles, and George Washington University, where he earned his degrees in engineering and business administration. Mr. Abbasi currently serves as the convener of the Awam Pakistan Party. Dr. Miftah Ismail is a renowned economist and former finance minister of Pakistan. He has served as the chairman of the Board of Investment and holds a wide-ranging expertise in development strategies. He earned his doctorate in public finance and political economy from the Wharton School at University of Pennsylvania. Dr. Ismail serves as the Secretary General of the APP. Our guests' experiences in politics, as well as their engagements in the corporate world, have equipped them with a deep understanding of the pressures and responsibilities that come with steering a nation through turbulent times and preparing it for future success. Today's discussion will explore their time in politics thus far, their vision for Pakistan's future, and the role of the newly established Awam Pakistan Party in realizing its vision. I am now handing the floor over to Nabiha Ahmed, our Director of Programs, and Myra Ahmed, Director of Political and Educational Affairs, to open today's discussion. The floor is yours, Nabiha and Myra.
Thank you very much, Lina. Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and welcome once again. So thank you both for joining us today. We are all looking forward to a thoroughly engaging and insightful discussion. We want to start first by delving a little bit into your background before heading into our policy-oriented discussion. Miftah sir, you earned your PhD from the prestigious Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. Following your graduation, you managed the family business and then joined the Pakistan Muslim League Noon, where you remained engaged ever since until recently. So we want to ask, what were the top 2 key learnings from your international educational experience that helped you throughout your political career?
Thank you so much for the introduction and the questions. I think the one thing that I learned in college was that people react to their incentives. And this is the crux of economics theory, really, price theory, that people react to their incentives. And so, when you have scarce resource and every resource is scarce on this finite planet, you have to, make policy which is incentive compatible so that people make the right choices. So that's the first key learning. And then the second learning is that without a thorough education, you can't really succeed in this today's world.
Thank you so much for that, sir. Over to you, Shahid Khaqan Abbasi Sahab. You began your career as an engineer and shifted into politics. specifically in the Pakistan Muslim League Noon Party. How would you describe your journey from studying engineering to going into politics, and what led to this change in career path?
Yeah, thank you very much. It's been a journey by default. I really didn't plan it that way. We're not a political family. But my father joined politics. He was an Air Force officer, then went into business. Then he joined politics, and then he was 3 years later killed in a bomb explosion. So I was drafted into politics at the age of 29, and it's been 36 years now. So it's been a long journey, and really, like Miftah said, the education that we had helped. I do not have any great claims on any great success in school, but really, I learned how to have a structured approach to problem solving. And I think that's helped me along my political career also. The 4 years of school at California taught me that, and then I think working in the US, I picked up the ethics at work there, and also values that have helped me, and really attention to detail in whatever you do. So I think that's been my take from the educational experience that I had in the US for 7 years.
Thank you so much. You said journey by default. It's nice to hear default in a different setting, in a political sphere. Over to you, Maya.
Thank you, sir. Miftah, sir, back to you. Drawing from your insights on education, there's something that we wanted to explore in terms of ministerial positions. There is widespread public sentiment that ministers in Pakistan are appointed due to political expediency and not necessarily on the basis of merit. And this is a sentiment that you both have echoed when founding Awam Pakistan. So Miftah, sir, out of Pakistan's many finance ministers to date, you were one of just 2 qualified economists. So do you think that Pakistan can draw inspiration from other democracies and appoint individuals based on technocracy?
Look, in a political government and in a democratic government, parties that come to power come through political popularity, or parties that come to power should come through political popularity. And so you will appoint ministers who are important, politicians in their own right. So there's nothing wrong. But you obviously want to find people who are competent within the MNAs, for instance. The problem in Pakistan is that our politics is so dysfunctional, if I may use the word. People putting each other in jail, accusing them of corruption, accusing them of all sorts of things, including getting wrongly married. That good people, competent people, don't enter politics. So you end up with politicians who are not even graduates, who are not educated, and who are just running on elections because their father and before them their grandfather and great-grandfather used to run. And so you end up with these political fiefdoms in different districts of Pakistan who elect politicians who know nothing about governance. And so you end up with incompetence at the highest levels. But that's not necessarily just true of Pakistan. There are countries even in North America where you have issues like that. That said, if you get good people into politics, competent people into politics, professionals into politics, then obviously politics will become better, and then governance will become better. But how do you get good people to come into politics if politics is such dysfunctional? So this is one of the reasons why we never speak ill of others. We don't bash others, because we think that there is a lot that we can offer ourselves in terms of our policy, in terms of our experience, in terms of our past, in terms of our integrity, etc. So we don't really need to diss, others. We don't need to speak badly of others, and hopefully, we will be able to collect competent people who understand the issues. But unfortunately, and that you can't guarantee that in a democracy, but you still need to have a democracy because the other alternatives are really horrible.
Okay,
So
just
Mara,
to...
if
Sorry,
you
go
allow
ahead.
me, just add to that just a little bit. And I've said this publicly several times, that you need 3 ingredients to be able to contribute in politics today. Number 1, you must have an education, not just a degree. Number 2, you must have life experience. You must have worked somewhere, done business. And number 3, you have to go through the political mill. And I see Miftah Ismail really as somebody who's a great example of this. He went through education, the highest you can get. He has a doctorate. He worked in multinationals. He worked in the World Bank. He worked in private business for a couple of decades. Then he came to politics. And this is his 16th year in politics. And this is really what differentiates him from other people who serve as finance ministers. Because, you know, being in politics is something that is very important to be able to contribute and work, especially in high level political jobs.
Agreed. I think ultimately it's either a cycle of continuity or a cycle of change. And I think we've been stuck on the same path for a very long time. Just to follow up on that quickly, I kind of wanted to ask what you think the impact of this kind of appointment system has been on Pakistan's policy making, in particular, you know, education policy, health policy, the finance ministry as well. We have seen that it's been the subject of a lot of electoral whims and political whims rather than long-term structural reforms. So where do you think the change can lie in that front?
You see, what happened is where the problem started. When we shifted from a centralized economic system to a market-based economic system. And that is also true for other policies in the social sector. Before that, the bureaucracy had the competence to kind of establish policies and help the ministers and the prime minister and the cabinet run the country. But when these changes started happening, the competence of the ministers was also exposed because they did not have the three ingredients I just talked to you about. They did not know how to make policy. They were not aware of the issues. And the ministerial departments are based upon politics rather than competence. I can even say for myself, I became a minister after 26 years of being a member of parliament. And nobody even asked me. Before that, you know, if you just walked up to the prime minister and you were in good favor, you could become a minister. I did not do that. And when 26 years later, I was asked, I was not given a choice. So I turned down a couple of choices that they had. And then I was told that this is a job you have to take. I had very little knowledge of petroleum, but as I told you, with my education, I was able to at least deliver to a certain extent there. So this is where things went wrong. When the policy making shifted to the ministerial level, where the competence of the minister was important, they didn't have that. And as governments changed, there was no stability in the policy, and everything kind of went south. So that's been really our problem. And even today, there's no realization of this fact that today, even as I speak, the minister is not in charge of his ministry. It is the secretary of the government, the bureaucrat, who's in charge of the ministry. It's a very small change, but it's a very significant change. But again, today, neither the minister nor the secretary have the competence or the experience in that particular ministry to be able to contribute. So that's a real dilemma, whether it's education or health or whatever. And then with the devolution that happened with the 18th Amendment, all the social sectors have gone down to the provinces. The federal government really has not much to do with it. So education, health, all these major issues are today a provincial subject. They're not a federal subject anymore.
Thank you so much, sir. And based on the conversation that we're having, the next question that sort of arises, which Miftah, if you could tell us more on this. One of the persistent issues that Pakistan's government has been facing, in addition to maybe the lack of competence, has been the inconsistent policies and lack of long-term planning, which we see also manifesting through the reshuffling of ministers. For example, the finance ministry in particular has seen multiple changes in leadership in recent years, which has contributed to economic instability. I'm sure you'd agree. So as a former minister yourself, could you explain how the assignments within your party have worked or will work? And in your experience as the finance minister previously as well, why are individuals not kept in their roles long enough to implement substantial policies, because that's how we'll sort of understand about their competence as well, right? We don't let them see their policies play out and we sort of change them before then. So one, how will you sort of mitigate this issue if and when you have the control of Pakistan, inshallah, as a democratic party? And two, what has been your experience thus far?
Can I request Shahid Khaqan Abbasi Saab to answer this question? I think he can answer this better. I would also like to hear his answer, actually.
Sure, sir. Over to you.
I think Miftah Saab can speak volumes on this. He's been a victim of this so-called reshuffle. And I think not only was he a victim, Pakistan was a victim. But having said that, I was a cabinet member and there was a meeting held on reshuffling the ministries. So there were views on both sides, that the reshuffle should be done or the reshuffle should not be done. So when my turn came to speak, I said that, look, I said, what is a reshuffle? I said, if I'm incompetent in this ministry, trust me, I'll be incompetent in the other ministry also. And not only will I be incompetent, I'll be very angry also. So I said, if you really want to reshuffle me, at least, just fire me. Just fire me and I'll go home. I'll be angry for a couple of days, but at least I will not be, a non-contributing member of your cabinet. So that's what I feel about reshuffles. When you select a minister, give him the chance to deliver and set targets for him, which are never done. And, on a whim, you call in a guy and you say, oh, you're not done. And unfortunately, in our political system, in our culture, it's kind of not the norm to fire somebody. So then a reshuffle is done. So I really believe if a prime minister, because the ministers serve at the pleasure of the prime minister. That's the bottom line in parliamentary democracy. So if somebody is not delivering, just fire him. Get a new person. This reshuffling business is really, really, I think, detrimental to the whole political system.
Let me just add a couple of things. And this has nothing to do with reshuffling. But people always say that in Pakistan, policies are not consistent. Actually, that's not strictly speaking true. Once the government of Pakistan gives a benefit to, some group, that benefit is hardly ever taken away, especially if it's given to powerful groups or rich people and powerful group. And obviously, you understand that benefits are mostly tailor-made for rich people and powerful people only, and not to the poor. That's why they remain poor, right? So once you give a policy incentive, it's very difficult for us to take. So sometimes there are policy changes, but for the most part, the government of Pakistan, for instance, has consistent policy, and these are obviously not necessarily good policies, but consistent policies. I'll give you an example of IPP. That in 1994, when Benazir Bhutto Sahiba started the IPP, independent power plants in Pakistan, and she started bringing power plants in Pakistan, they came up with a number of 17%, that they will give 17% return on equity or return on investment to investors, and that this would be a dollar-based return on 17%. I don't know why they came up with the number 17, but it was what it is. Then Pervez Musharraf came in 2002. He came up with a new power policy, but that 17% return on investment was maintained. Then in 2013, Nawaz Sharif came. He came up with a new power policy, but that 17% return on investment in dollar terms was maintained. Also maintained, across these three policies, was the fact that NEPRA will give a predetermined price or upfront price for the cost of power plant and for the cost of capacity payments, and investors just have to take that as a given. It was only in 2018, when Shahid Abbasi was prime minister, that we changed that policy, and we said that henceforth there would be no predetermined 17% return on investment, but the power plants or companies wanting to establish power plants will compete, will bid against each other, and we will take the lowest price. And so whatever the market is will be the price that will obtain. Well, that policy was also short-lived. As soon as we went out and Imran Khan came, they again reverted back to the 17% return on investment policy, and that exists to this day. So we've actually had a bad policy that's consistent, that's actually stood at the test of time since 1994. And the only 6 or 8 month period where we changed that policy and brought in price discovery through bidding has been done away with.
That makes sense. Now that we have shifted focus to the policy aspect, Mr. Ismail Saab, particularly towards you, during your tenure as finance minister, default became a new buzzword in the media. It incited a lot of fear in the hearts of the public. As an economics student myself, I understand that default is never a cause. It's an effect of underlying, factors. And the term was sort of used repeatedly to highlight the country's financial instability. Very few of our media personnel actually went into the depths. So, every time the population of Pakistan heard the word default, it was बस मुल्क default करने लगा है, अब हमारा कुछ नहीं होने वाला, डॉलर देखें किस तरह बढ़ रहा है. So I really want to use this platform to sort of understand for the layman. Can you explain what default actually means? How does it impact the economy and the everyday lives of Pakistani citizens?
Okay, so default actually means Pakistani government, or any government for that matter, not meeting its international obligations. So every month and every few weeks we have monies that we have to pay to a World Bank, Asian Development Bank, some other commercial banks, and then we have our bonds. So every so often we have to pay interest on that debt, and as well as repay principal. And default basically means just one occurrence where you'd say that we don't have the money and we can't pay you. And because there's a moral hazard, a lot of countries owe a lot of money, and every country would like to go through default and get like a 30% break or 40% break, which is normally called a haircut that all the investors will take, or all the lenders will take a haircut of 30-40%, and then the country will actually then repay the remaining 60% in a rescheduled, release with a rescheduled loan payments. But because every country would like that, so that the lending countries, lending companies and lending institutions, including European countries, including commercial banks, including international multilateral banks, and Western countries and rich countries, China, Japan, etc., they make it very, very hard for a country to go through this process. It normally takes 2 to 3 years to come out on the other side of a default. And during that 2 years, you normally lose about 10% of your GDP. So if Pakistan's GDP today is, let's say, $350 billion, it's likely that if we were to go through default, we would probably lose $35-40 billion of our GDP. And it would be horrendously bad for the people in terms of prices going up, fuel shortages, power shortages, et cetera, medicine shortages, etc. So default is not an outcome that you should ever want, and you should try and avoid that. The problem in Pakistan is that we just don't live within our means, whether it is our external means or local means. So that in this year, for instance, our tax intake, the federal government's tax intake is supposedly $13,000 billion rupees. And once we give about 6,000 billion rupees back to the provinces, the federal government is left with 7,000 billion rupees. And of that 7,000 billion rupees, in fact, it actually will be left with 6,000 billion rupees. We have to the debt servicing itself would be 9,800 billion rupees. So we have to borrow money just to pay interest. And that's called a debt trap, that we are in a debt trap that just to pay interest back, we have to borrow, which means that we will have more and more debt every year. The trick is, or the thing that as sound economists should pursue, or sound economic policy would be, that our GDP should be rising faster than our debt, so that the debt to GDP ratio comes under control, and that we should have enough foreign resources, which means that export should be higher, or export plus, in our case, remittance should be higher than our imports, so that we have some extra money left in the current account from which with which we can service foreign debt. But that also doesn't happen. Pakistan normally used to run a current account deficit of about 1% of GDP, 1.5% of GDP. That's okay. That's okay for a third world growing economy to run this kind of GDP. debt to current account to GDP, or trade balance to GDP, trade deficit to GDP ratio. But then starting in 2017 and 18, that ratio went up really, really high. Then again in 2021, it went to really, really high, 5%, 5.5%. And those are not sustainable. And when you run unsustainable current account deficits, foreigners who are lending you dollars become very cautious and they don't lend you dollars. That forces you, because you're not able to borrow money, that forces you to go into default. And that's when you have to go to the IMF, and you get into an IMF program, which is more of a certificate than the money that comes from the IMF. And IMF gives you a certificate of good health or good housekeeping, and then you can go and borrow money from other banks, other institutions, and so you avoid or avert a default.
Great, thank you, sir. That was very helpful even for me. And I think that's something जो हम भी अपने बचपन से सुनते आ रहे हैं कि Pakistan is racking up debt without any consequential growth. So looking forward, I think the fundamental follow-up question is, what comprehensive structural reforms do you believe are necessary to prevent Pakistan from repeatedly facing the risk of default? How would these reforms address the root causes of economic instability, and how can they create a more resilient and stable economy?
Sir, Shahid bhai?
Go ahead, go ahead. I think it's more of a structural problem than I can add a bit to it.
The structural problem actually requires political will more than economic acumen. So I can come up with a lot of good solutions, but you need somebody who has the political will to do this. And really, at some point in running the country's finance minister is, yes, sure, you need to have an economics understanding and economics background, but you really need to have the political will to actually, at this point in Pakistan's juncture in Pakistan's history, you need to have political will to implement these decisions. The number one structural problem in Pakistan right now is the NFC, the National Finance Commission Award, which gives 60% of monies to the provinces, or 57.5% money to the provinces. Then we give another 1% to KPK for war on terror, another 0.67% of the divisible pool to Sindh for octroi that they don't charge. Then we have to pay for Kashmir, Azad Kashmir, we have to pay for Gilgit-Baltistan, ex-FATA territories, and Islamabad. So altogether, the federal government gives up 62.5% of its tax revenue to the provinces, and it's left only with 38%. That is not nearly enough to the expenses it has. It's not even nearly enough to cover the debt. And so the federal government budget goes up really high. The budget deficit can only be financed two ways: either your own money, okay, which is that Pakistan's savings minus Pakistan's investment, gross savings minus gross investment. But that's not a positive number, actually. That's a negative number. So we don't even have gross savings more than the gross investments in Pakistan. So the budget can only be financed externally. And so that external money can come through what is called current account deficit. And that's why they're called Nabiha knows this, the twin deficit, this is called. So that current account deficit and fiscal deficits are called twin deficits, and the higher fiscal deficit you run, other things being equal, the higher will be current account deficit. So that's why we have such large current account deficits, because we're running those harsh deficits. The other way of financing this is to just print money, which is when State Bank of Pakistan or any central bank, when it lends money to or buys bond from the government or buys bond from a private sector or commercial bank, it's actually just printing money. And so Pakistan has resorted to printing money. And when you print money, you have inflation. And so that's why you had like this 30% inflation last year, because the State Bank was just printing money. There is not enough money in Pakistan to supply that deficit, to pay for that government deficit. And nor are we trying to run any foreign deficits, and we are trying to curtail the foreign investment, current account deficit, which is foreigners' way of giving their savings to you. So you end up with printing money and you end up running with inflation. So the first structural change that you will make is change the NFC award. And the first principle of federalism and local public finance is that people who spend money should also be responsible to raise money. So the provinces and divisions and districts should raise their own money, through whether it's sales tax on services, whether it's local income tax, although they're allowed to do that, or agriculture they are, or through most likely through property tax. And as you know, even in America, school districts have their own tax, and people shop where to live based on what school districts are good. And that creates a competition between localities. It's called TIBO competition. And there brings that competition brings efficiency. So you want to have smaller jurisdiction which compete for services, which compete against each other with taxes. And so the second structure that you would want to make after the changing the NFC award is to have an empowered local government system across Pakistan. And about 80% of the provincial authorities should be devolved to the local governments, whether it's provinces, this thing. The third most important structure that I would make, and it's possibly not third most important, is the most important, is that we have a we have a minister of population. Shahid Saab has been prime minister once. Ask him, he will probably not even remember the name of his population minister. But he would remember the name of his finance minister because finance minister you see 4 times a day, 5 times a day. Population minister you never see even once a month, okay? Pakistan is going to have 8 million babies born this year. That's 8 million babies. We don't have classrooms for that. We already have 26 million kids out of school, which is the highest population of out of school kids in the world. So we need to get a hold of on our population growth. And we need to, half of our pregnancies in Pakistan are unwanted. So we really need to provide contraception services and all that. Then, of course, you need to change our schooling. 78% of 10-year-old kids in Pakistan cannot read 2 sentences, age-appropriate 2 sentences in any language. So obviously we are failing our children, right? Which means what I suggest is like they have in America with magnet schools and vouchers for private schools, that we should let the government, which spends about 5,000 rupees per person, per child per month, educating the kids, give 4,000 rupee voucher to every child in Pakistan whose parents want to send him to private school. As long as he's going to school, we should pay for it. And we should also have a school meal program and give breakfast to children when they come to school. And we need to shrink the footprint of the government. In Pakistan, lives are really hard and very stressful. I mean, people who move outside Pakistan to Dubai or to America and all that, they think life is relatively stress-free. In Pakistan, in summer, you don't have electricity, so you have load shedding. In winter, you don't have gas. Just when you need hot water to shower, you don't have gas. Throughout the year, at least in Karachi, in many other places in Pakistan, you don't have water, so you have to buy your own water. There is no provision for picking up garbage from your home regularly. The roads, maybe outside of Lahore, are really bad. The traffic accidents are really bad. Traffics are really bad. You cannot get one police FIR registered anywhere in Pakistan without having to pay bribes to the police officer. So we make life very difficult. One of the big problems in Pakistan is that if somebody dies, to find a place in Kabristan, to just get a cemetery plot is very difficult. So we make life very difficult. One of the things that we want to do is to shrink the government so that life becomes easier for Pakistan. And let private sector do these things, provide bijli, provide pani, provide electricity, provide gas. And let's try and shrink the size of the government because our government is inefficient. We should just concentrate on running courts and police stations and not try to run petrol pumps.
Thank you so much, sir. That's okay. We really appreciate the deep responses. It gives us an insight into your policy and your plans for the future of Pakistan. You mentioned a lot of things in your response, and one thing that we'd like to touch upon, Sir Abbasi, is that you own a private airline, AirBlue, and it's been relatively successful under your leadership and is one of Pakistan's foremost airlines. Given your experience in successfully managing a private airline, why do you think Pakistan International Airlines continues to struggle? It did so within your leadership as well. What challenges did you encounter in managing a state-owned enterprise, and how was it different from running a private business?
Okay, that's a good question.
Thank you for that question.
You're most welcome, sir. Anytime.
Yeah, let me just come back to where Miftah Saab stopped. He gave a very technical answer. I'll give you what they call a 30,000-foot answer. you need, the first ingredient in any political development, you need political stability. So that's the first thing we need in Pakistan. And to have political stability, you must have elections which are non-controversial. Every election since Pakistan came into being has been controversial. And that has contributed to political instability, and as a resulting, the economy has suffered. And what do you do after that? You have to fix the system of governance. Every system of government has failed. You need massive reform. You cannot tinker with it anymore. You really have to reinvent the whole way the government works. If you look at our problems in a global context, the problems are fairly small. If we have a $30 billion of additional exports, if we can earn $30 billion more, our current account deficit goes away. We will have employment, and then we can look at additional taxation and growth of the economy within. So, if you look at Vietnam for the last 10 years, I think they've been adding almost 15 billion of exports every year, adding. And we've only been able to come up to 30 billion in 77 years. So there's, that's something that the private sector has to fundamentally fix. You asked me about the airline sector. Airlines are the most difficult business in the world. Collectively, it's a 100-year-old industry. The industry has lost more money than they've earned. If you remember all the old names, Pan Am, TWA, Eastern, a whole bunch of airlines, they don't exist anymore. So the bottom line is the government sector cannot do any business, let alone run an airline. And from day one, when I was in PIA, at that time, PIA was not losing money. We were not borrowing from the government. We could borrow on our own balance sheet. So it was run as a public company. We had authority to do whatever we wanted, because we never came back to the government to ask for money. But then, and I told them at that time also that if this cannot continue, you need to privatize it as soon as you can. And Pakistan is really a very successful privatization story. In 1990, we had almost 70 corporations owning about 460 industrial units in Pakistan. Everything in Pakistan was owned by the government, from banks to cars to fertilizer to cement, roti plants, you name it, the government owned it. All of that was sold off, but PI was not sold off, and neither has Pakistan Rail has been privatized. And that has been the problem. Because the decision-making in the public sector is very difficult. And airlines require decision-making in an instant. You can't even wait an hour to take a decision. So that's been the story of PIA. When there was no competition, you had high yields in the airline business, the costs were very low, PIA was successful. But when competition came and you needed efficiency, PIA could not compete. And again, as a regulator, that's where Pakistan really, I think, has been a story of failure, is in regulation. When again, like I said, we transition from a centralized economy into a market-based economy. And when you transition from an owner of industries into a regulator of industry, that is where we failed. And that happened to the airline sector also. I think Pakistan, to run an airline in Pakistan, and I've personally been aware of this. I've been talking about it. To run an airline in Pakistan is probably the most expensive in the world. Everything that you run, and airlines are like power, are in the power sector, creating electricity, it's in dollars. So, for example, I can safely say to run an airline today in Pakistan, the cost is about 30% higher than running an airline in Dubai. And that's the regulator's issue. The regulator does not understand what the airline business is. The same thing is with the power regulator, the same thing with the gas regulator, the same thing with the SECP. So I think that's very critical to understand, that we have to create an environment where business can thrive. We create an environment where the regulator's only job is how not to let something function, make it so stringent that things cannot function. And that's been really the problem with Pakistan. So the regulators need to understand that their job is to support industry to let it function. I've worked personally with 10 regulators around the world, aviation regulators. And I can tell you all 9 of them help you how to fly and put an aircraft in the air. There's one regulator, which is Pakistan, which is totally focused on how they will ground your airplane. How they will use the rules to ground you to increase your cost. So that's the unfortunate fact of Pakistan. So as a result, PIA is in a debt of several $1 billion today, and it's not a small issue. So that's the story about airlines. I think we're all very passionate about the aviation business, but who owns British Airways today? A very iconic airline. It's owned by today Spanish, Chinese, and UAE companies. So I think we need to get out of India. India was the last bastion of the so-called national carrier. Even they've sold off, and it's been a very successful venture. It's not about what the government earns from selling it. It's about cutting your losses and also allowing the company to grow. Air India is one of the biggest kind of potential growth businesses in the aviation sector today.
Thank you, sir. I think the question of what and who thrives in Pakistan is one we really need to explore as a country. Before we begin the discussion on Awam Pakistan, you both have been very prominent members of the Pakistan Muslim League Noon, one of Pakistan's foremost political parties and the one that is currently in government. I think everyone has this question. So Mr. Abbasi first and Miftah sir second. At what point did you make the decision to leave PML-N, and what was your reason for leaving the party?
Yeah. Again, I am very much against people changing parties. I've said that consistently, and I joined the Muslim. My first election was as an independent. I did not have a party ticket, but since then I've been with the PML-N for 35 years, and whatever the PML-N did right or wrong in that period, we're part of it. We cannot today disassociate. I cannot disassociate myself from the decision making. And overall, my feeling always was that PML-N stood for, and you may agree or disagree with it, amongst the parties that were there, the PML-N stood for a certain level of competence, a certain level of democratic principles. Nothing is ideal. And that's why I stayed with the party. What you do not see from outside is and that is the crux of politics or democracy, is the dissent within a party, because that is not publicly debated. So I spent 35 years with the PML-N. Of this, I spent 26 years in opposition, on the opposition benches in parliament, and I spent about 5 years in opposition to my own party within the party ranks. I only served as a minister and prime minister for 5 years. But again, whatever happened in that period, I am part of that success or failure. So I think we're all answerable. Again, why did I change my course of politics? We stood for the PML-N in opposition. We stood for what we call vote ko izzat do, which means that we believe in democracy. We believe in every institution, including the army, staying within its constitutional limits. And we suffered for it. But that's fine. That's part of the political journey. Jail, etc. Even the first Memon to go to jail in Pakistan was Miftah Ismail. So he holds that credit also. So even we had a Memon go to jail for politics of principles in Pakistan. In 2022, the PML-N made a shift to a pro-establishment approach. And I, within the party also, I talked about it. I also privately also counseled my leadership to stay with its course of not necessarily an anti-establishment stance, but a stance of political and democratic principles, which I believe we had abandoned. So anyway, that course correction did not come. I have no issues. I've never asked for a party position or a government position from the PML-N leadership. I counseled them for over a year. And then finally, when I did not see a course correction, I told Mr. Nawaz Sharif, who's my leader over those 35 years, that I will not be able to contest on the PML-N ticket anymore. And then later on, I took a decision not even to contest at all, because I did not think the elections would produce results that were favorable for Pakistan or even favorable for democracy. We could see that the elections would be rigged to a very large extent. The rigging was even beyond my expectation. It's very difficult for a constituency politician, especially from like myself, who's contested every election since 1988, to sit out the election. There's a lot of pressure on me from the constituency, and that's the base of every parliamentary politician. That's his base. He has to win the election to be of any consequence in politics. And people are not happy with me for not contesting. They asked me to even contest as independent, and I thought I told them that it would again be negation of my own principles, because I created and I supported and I fostered the PML-N in my own constituency. It would be unfair to go back to the same people now and ask them to vote for me as independent. So I set out the elections, and today I have no I have no official position in government, but fortunately, I think the last few months have been really an eye-opener for me on how the people of Pakistan view politicians. And I get much more respect today than I've ever had in politics as a member of parliament or as a minister or as a prime minister. So I think that speaks volumes, and I think that vindicates my decision here also. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Over to you, Miftah, sir.
So I have, I mean, I have some beliefs about economics, or what good economics or good policies are, and that those were ingrained in me while I was studying economics, and since I came back to Pakistan and I've worked in Pakistan in various businesses, etc., etc. So I've always believed in free markets and letting people be. So when I was made minister in 2018, end of 2017, beginning of end of 2017, for about 5 months while Mr. Dar had gone to England to avoid arrest. I changed some policies. I started devaluing the currency. And then we also tried to decrease tax rates. And in fact, we brought the highest tax rates for salaried individuals and business individuals to 15%. Because I think I understood Pakistan, and Shahid Abbasi have understood Pakistan, that it's very, very difficult to get tech people to pay taxes when taxes are as high as 40–45%. People evade taxes, and there are many ways to do that. And we also wanted to, end a few things like this thing called non-filer and all that stuff in the budget. Anyway, so we did this, and then once we were in opposition, there were 4 or 5 people in Muslim League who were really vocal in opposition to PTI: Shahid Abbasi Saab, Ehsan Iqbal Saab, Maryam Aurangzeb, Musaddiq Malik, Mohammad Zubair, and I. I mean, I think 5 or 6 people who would go on TV and who would do pressers and all that stuff, and write stuff, and I would write a column in news every week. And one of the things that Mr. Dar would ask other leaders to ask me is not to go on TV and not to say things like that we should have devalued the currency and all that stuff. But I mean, I could wave my hands on a lot of issues, but economic policy is something that I believe in passionately, and I talk about this. And then when I became and we were, I think, very effective in opposition, so much so that we ended up in jail for a bit. But 5 years later, PTI people are now saying, "Oh, that was a wrong case. We should not have put Miftah Ismail or Shahid Abbasi or Ehsan Iqbal in jail." But I mean, they tell the truth now, but it's 5 years too late. But it is what it is. So then when I became a minister in 2022, April 2022, the government of Pakistan was losing 110 billion rupees a month. For context, let me just tell you that it used to take only 40 billion rupees, less than 40 billion rupees a month to run the civil government. It was about 80 billion rupees to run the defense forces. So 120 billion, I could run the entire government. And 110 billion was my loss per month on just, the import and sales of petrol and diesel. That was just unacceptable. I mean, we were definitely going to bankrupt the government of Pakistan. And I would fight every day that, we need to, raise the prices, and IMF was on my head that please raise prices and all that stuff. And Mr. Dar, who really wanted to become minister, was opposing this tooth and nail. And somehow he convinced Nawaz Sharif Saab also that the government should be losing this kind of money and risk default and not lose money. So we would have a lot of arguments with them. And finally they fired me. But then after they fired me, they actually offered me a couple of other ministerial jobs, but I refused. But I was, I thanked them, but I refused graciously. And then I continued with what I believed was the right policy. I continued with talking about what I believe was the right policy of how we need to get back with the IMF program. And Mr. Dar then wasted 6 months to get back to the IMF, and we ran the highest inflation in the history of Pakistan. And the PML-N was not happy about the fact that I was criticizing Mr. Dar. But while they were not able to, ask him to stay quiet and he could criticize me all he wants. So the government, the PML-N had given him permission to criticize me. I gave myself permission to criticize him for his policy. And so, slowly and slowly the distances grew. And then, to be very honest with you, it was very disappointing because I think they're personally very good people, PML-N people. And I mean, not only did they believe in, better governance, they're actually, this is not a popular opinion, but I think they provide better integrity than other political parties in Pakistan, without a doubt in my mind. That they have more financial integrity. Obviously, there are only few people who understand even in conflict of interest and avoid that. But for the most part, PML-N has exhibited greater competence and greater integrity than PTI and People's Party. So they're good, but they're good people. But they've lost their way. They really have lost their way. And let's just be honest. I mean, Shahid Bhai, obviously, as he always is very gracious. But the fact of the matter is, it's not a matter of being anti-establishment or pro-establishment. It's not believing in votes. I mean, if you actually don't win the elections, you have no right to be there. And one should be embarrassed to oneself that, if I've lost the election, what am I doing sitting in the assembly? This kind of personal thing. I mean, forget, you could be very pro-army, you could be very anti-army, but if you've lost the election, don't sit in the assembly. So this is an issue. But they decided that they were going to be in power no matter what. And we actually had done polling, and our polls are actually turned out to be exactly accurate, to what would happen in the elections.
Thank you so much. And while we have quite a few questions, both Myra and I, we've been following this for quite some time. Unfortunately, we're really running into time constraints, and our audience have quite a few questions. So this one will be the last question from our side. Then we'll be transferring on to the audience Q&A. So, we had a large discussion on different policies. We talked about your vision. We talked about policy implementation for the future. But the fact of the matter also is that Pakistan, the population of Pakistan, is sort of very disheartened with the current political situation. And it's sort of not, the political climate isn't as great as it used to be back then. So given this challenge, and of course, there are many stakeholders, they have divisive politics, disillusioned the public. How do you plan to rewrite the population under Awam Pakistan? And how will your party differentiate itself and effectively address the pressing issues that you're very well aware of without contributing to further fragmentation? Either of you could please take this question.
Sure.
Okay, let me just start off. See, number one, we have to realize we're always told about political pragmatism. Political pragmatism, to me, does not mean the operating outside the Constitution. The Constitution is sacrosanct. So that is the biggest problem in Pakistan today. There is not a single institution that is operating within the Constitution. We have a very explicit Constitution where the oaths of office or every constitutional office are also part of the Constitution. And I can assure you that every one of those oaths is being violated every day by the office holder who took that oath. That's our real dilemma. So to come to power, if you have to compromise with a situation like that, I think that's something that the Pakistan Awam will not do. We were part of a party which were doing that. We have moved away from that. So I think it's very important that today for Pakistan to really move forward, we have to revert back to constitutional rule. And if there's an issue with the Constitution, let's all sit down and change it. We have that authority. People have given us that authority, whatever happened in the election, but at least today, the Assembly can sit down and change the Constitution. So all the political leaders have to sit down let the Army Chief be there, let the Chief Justice be there, because they're all influencers in our political system today. So we have to go back to constitutional rule. That's very critical. So the Awam Pakistan stands for constitutional rule, and sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
You're
We do not believe in continuing with the status quo. Every political party out there has been in power in the last 3 years. We just don't take a longer time frame, just take the last 3 years. Every political party has been in power. Have they been able to do anything? They've made compromises on their principles, on democratic principles, on parliamentary form of government. They violated the Constitution and just to come to power. So have they been able to do anything with the power that they hold today? No. So that's what we stand for. And I think more than anything, just the fact that we are there today, we talk about the Constitution, we talk about principles, we talk about parliamentary practices, I think that is enough of a victory for us. And I think we go to the people with this message, and I think they'll respond. And we'll also be putting out a vision document which will give the solutions of Pakistan to a certain extent. And there's nothing extraordinary about this. This is just basic common sense which Pakistan needs today in its systems of governance, in the reform that it needs to do. And that's what we'll put out. And hopefully, instead of having a manifesto that has a lot of hot air, but no practical steps, I think we'll have a document which will provide a roadmap for any government in power that is there.
Thank you so much. We'd like to hand it over to Lena for the question answer. It's been a privilege talking to you both on mine behalf as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much again for those insightful responses. Our discussion was thoroughly engaging and addressed a wide range of issues that we will now further explore in our Q&A session. I will now hand it over to Abdullah, our Director of Public Relations, and Shahid, a dedicated member of our coalition, to conduct the Q&A. Over to you guys.
Thank you so much, Lena. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Shahid, and I'm honored to be a member of the PSA Coalition. I'll be facilitating the Q&A session today alongside Abdullah. Over to you, Abdullah.
Yes, we will. All right. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Abdullah. It's a pleasure to be here again.
So to all our participants who are with us, we truly appreciate your thoughtful questions. We have a lot of questions for our esteemed guests. I just want to say to the participants, your active involvement is what makes these discussions so enriching. If you have any further questions during the session, please type them in the chat and we'll do our best to address them. And now I'll give the floor to Abdullah.
All right. Thank you, Shahid. So our first question is going to be directed to you, Mr. Ismail. It's about the current situation. So you said Pakistan has really suffered because of the constant flip-flopping between finance ministers. So In the present situation, I wanted to get your opinion. What do you think of the current finance minister, Muhammad Aurangzeb? Because his policies ostensibly seem to have stabilized Pakistan's inflation issue, and he has replenished Pakistan's foreign reserves. Do you have any positive comments, any negative comments, any criticisms, recommendations?
I think Aurangzeb is a good guy, great guy actually, and competent. He is also a Wharton graduate like me, and but to be very honest with you, and I think that his thinking about economic policy is correct, but the budget that I saw this time was very disappointing. I think it was one of the most atrocious budgets we've seen. And I don't necessarily blame Aurangzeb for it. I think that the political government made the decisions that Aurangzeb had no choice but to accept. I think the idea of increasing taxes on salaried people from to 38.5% to start taxing people with 50,000 rupee per month salary, to double the taxation of people making 75,000 or 100,000 rupees a month is wrong. When you are doubling the public sector development program budget. The idea of taxing milk and infant formula is wrong when you are increasing current expenditures by 24%. The idea of putting tax on professionals like doctors and lawyers to 49.5% is wrong when you're spending 500 to 600 billion rupees on M&A and MPS projects. I think the priorities of this government are lopsided. I don't think they understand the problems right now being faced by the middle classes of Pakistan or working classes of Pakistan. We already have 100 million poor in Pakistan. That's about 40% of the population. After this budget, I'm 100% sure another 15 million people will go under poverty, which means another, 15 million people, including perhaps 10 million kids or more kids, will be subject to poverty, will be subject to hunger, will be subject to stunting and wasting and all the health problems that, that poor people face. This budget was a chance for them to reform, start talking about NFC, start talking about pension reforms, start taxing agriculture, land and income, start taxing large-scale properties, start addressing, the money is going to the provinces. They failed. They completely failed. And the problem is that Pakistan governments always fail. It's not a new thing. But since we failed so many times, they don't have that much time. And, one more year and then you are again looking at defaults. What are you doing? This was the time for you. This is the first budget of a new government. However they came, but they are supposedly there for 5 years. This is your first budget. If you can't make reforms now, you'll never be able to reform. So that was my criticism of the budget.
Well, yeah, that was one criticism I saw repeated by many finance experts and economists looking in, questioning where's the taxes on retail and real estate and agriculture. But even putting aside those gaping holes, which I think ostensibly it seems Aurangzeb has no control over, what do you think of the line posed by the IMF and by the current government that these are necessary reforms and that things will get worse before they get better? Can we get your comments about that?
I agree with half of what they're saying. The things that will get worse. It's not clear to me things will get better because there is no reform. If you have high cost of power and you pass this cost on to the consumers, that's not a reform. Reform is when you try and decrease your cost. Reform is when you change policies so that you smooth out the demand curve for power so that you can sell more power in the summer, in the winter also. Reform is when you try and reduce T&D losses. Reform is when you try and collect more bills. Reform is when you try to, solve the problems of tribal area, power, when you solve the problems of tube wells in Balochistan. This is not reforms. This is just passing the buck to the consumers. This is saying that to the consumers, we will remain as inefficient as we are, but hell, you pay for it. Okay, this is what they're saying. So this is not reform. Increasing taxes on salaried individuals is not reform. They're not even going to get more taxes because I know people will evade. I mean, you think that Pakistan should have 49.5% tax on doctors and engineers and business individuals? You think those guys will pay? And if they pay, you think that's fair? You think the government of Pakistan provides you the sort of services that gives them the moral right to ask for half your income? And on what planet do you ask for it? Why did they not try and cut government expenditures? Why are you, if you are projecting inflation to be 15%, why are you increasing your current expenditures, taking away the debt servicing by 24%? So I mean, Aurangzeb is a friend of mine, is a good guy, is a smart guy, but this government has failed us. This government had an opportunity to start reform, but they've just prolonged. The fact of the matter is that if you cannot even tax retail shops 3,000 rupees a month, 100 rupees a day, 30 cents a day, you can't do anything. And Shahbaz Sharif's government is scared of its shadows. And this is what happens when you're not fairly elected.
All right, very resolute, very clear. Okay, over to you, Shahzeb. I think we have another question. Safi Bajwa.
Thank you, Abdullah. Keeping interest of time, we can quickly go over these questions. So a lot of students have asked questions related to what is your party's policy when it comes to population growth, because this is something that no mainstream party actually covers. This is like one of our major problems going forward. So how would your party tackle issues such as population growth? And if you could also talk about climate change in the mix, because we, the youth, feel like climate change and population growth are like the major things going forward that are going to be crucial towards Pakistan's success. And none of like mainstream political parties currently are actively addressing these issues. So your thoughts on that would be greatly appreciated.
Sir.
The two issues you mentioned are very critical issues. But unfortunately, when you have a fiscal deficit and a current account deficit, these things fall by the wayside because they're not visible today. The impact of these issues is not visible today. The population control is very, very critical. It's when you have 2.4% population, then a 5% growth would mean 2.6% real growth. That's not going to take you very far. So Pakistan needs a very robust population control program. It needs buy-in from the religious leaders, it needs buy-in from the provinces, but this process has to be initiated. Unfortunately, nothing has been done about it for several decades now. In the 60s and 70s, Pakistan had one of the most successful population control programs in the world, and it was successful. At partition, what is Pakistan now was called West Pakistan, and we were about 4.5 crores. Bangladesh, East Pakistan then, was 6.5 crores. We are at 240 million today, they're at 160 million. So there is a very clear program that we need to follow. It's very critical to follow that. On the environment change, Pakistan is really one of the most affected countries on the world. Because the global warming is affecting, we have a very large glacier system in Pakistan. It's affecting that. It's together with population growth, it's affecting the climate in all our major cities. We have very serious issues with air quality in most cities in Pakistan, one of the worst in the world. And again, not much has been invested into that. Fortunately, we are very small contributors to greenhouse gases and emissions globally as a per capita, because we have a very low consumption of energy per capita. We are by default a responsible global citizen. But I think we need to do more for ourselves, and we need to go out into the global community because we are the 5th largest country in the world. So if 240 million people are contributing less than a country which is half its size, I think Pakistan needs to get a premium for being a global responsible citizen. That's something that we've also failed in. So I think there has been more emphasis on our environmental issues. Internally, we have a much bigger problem. Our sewage issues, our dumping of chemicals into the water system. These are the access to clean water. These are very serious issues that can be addressed locally. Again, the emphasis, these are provincial government issues. The emphasis of the provincial government has been on other things than on these basic issues that the population is affected by today.
Thank you so much, Abbasi Saab, for that insightful response. I will just ask one more question before I hand it over to Abdullah. So I would consider this a spicy question. This was asked by one of our audience members. How will Awam Pakistan try to implement its policies despite the establishment's ever-expanding influence in politics? How do you think your party will handle this type of power dynamic?
See, I would say the lack of competence in the political parties contributes to a greater footprint for the establishment. So when you have a party that is competent, that has the right policies, that is able to intellectually counter whatever narrative the establishment puts out there, I think that is the answer to this whole situation. And that's really the answer to our basic issue of the rule of the constitution and rule of law. You need to have that level of competence within a party to have a logical, rational narrative.
Thank you so much, sir, for that response, Abdullah.
All right. Thank you for handing it over at that. That's just a perfect place to end it off, Shahzad. Okay. So next up. So a lot of people are asking this question. So I guess I'll compile them all at once, and I will say, if you could implement either one of you can answer this. If you could implement 3 major decisions, which ones would you believe to be the most consequential? Which one would you implement right off the bat if you thought those were the best for Pakistan?
Is it, Mr. Saab, I think the economic issues.
No, go ahead, sir. You answered.
Number one, I said, is the rule of the constitution. That is the most critical thing. Everything flows from there. Number two, you have to make people responsible citizens. Mr. Saab talked about taxation. I don't talk about, we should tax, have sectoral taxation, but I talk about every citizen being responsible, being a responsible taxpayer. Whatever income I have, I should be paying a part of that income to the government. Of course, we'll have a certain cutoff at the bottom, let's say 1 lakh rupees a month, you don't pay any taxes. We have a very, very strong database, which is NADRA. That can be used. Today, NADRA has 125 million cards issued, which means we have 125 million adults who are also voters, and they influence the politics of Pakistan. So every person having a NIC, a national ID card, should be a taxpayer or at least a tax filer. So people can go on an app and they can say, okay, I have no income, I'm not paying any taxes. But then the government has visibility on your expenditure. So if you have expenditure, you must have an income. And if you have an income above a certain level, there is a partner to that income, which is called the government of Pakistan. That's the way it works all over the world. So that is very critical that we, the citizens of this country, whether they are self-employed, they are salaried people, they are in agriculture, whatever they do in Pakistan, they pay, but they should not be paying 30-40% tax. Miftah Saab and myself, we had dropped the tax slabs of income tax in Pakistan to just 3 basic slabs, 5%, 10%, 15%, with a 100,000 rupee per month cutoff, but everybody had to file. And that was the first step to the system that I just put before you. And this was implemented for 2 months. It was passed in the finance bill and implemented in July and August 2018, but then was reversed by the PTI government, unfortunately. So that's my second issue. The third is you must address the issue of education. Not only the kids out of school, but the quality of education in Pakistan. That is the key to Pakistan's future, especially with AI coming in, and which has the potential to create massive unemployment around the world, especially in countries like Pakistan. So it's very important that we address and this needs investment both at the provincial and federal level. It's very critical that we address the issue of quality of education in Pakistan today. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Ismail, do you have anything to add?
I'll just give you guys an example. I mean, since you are all students, think of 4 or 5 students sharing an apartment. So the first day of September in your college, fall semester starts, you come up with a roommate agreement. Okay. Everybody has their own room, but you have kitchen duties and bathroom cleaning and all that stuff, and you guys come up with some agreement of who will pay what and extra all of that. Then if 1 or 2 roommates start occupying other roommates' rooms, or using your laptops, or using your using your duvet or all that stuff, and then the other 2 also start doing this, and none of you obey the roommate agreement, this will not make life good for you. And the apartment life will be dysfunctional, and all your GPAs will also suffer. The first thing you need to do is to actually rewrite the damn roommate agreement, but stick to whatever agreement you write. That roommate agreement is the Constitution. So we should do what we write, and then write what we do. And whatever it's written, we should do. So that's the first thing which Shahid Bhai said. I would make 2 other difference. My other second and third priority would be actually change the NFC award, and number 3 would be local governments that empower local governments, constitutional local governments, who take about 80% of the responsibility of the provinces. Then, of course, population planning is very important, and you have to provide contraception services, reproductive health services in every village of Pakistan. And as I said, half of pregnancies are unwanted, so we can really reduce the number of kids. And once you cut down infant mortality and all that, you will also see that the number of kids go down. If you educate girls more, you will see the number of families or number of kids go down. And then, of course, as Shahid Bhai said, you need to change education, and you need to have the government pay for poor people's education, but deliver it through private sector.
Okay, piggybacking off of that, the next question is, what will you do to help improve the primary, secondary, and college level education, which is admittedly a provincial issue, and you said you have a method of trying to implement it, but on a wider scale, just branching into universities and secondary education as well, how would you implement reforms on that scale?
Look, as I said, I mean, one of the first things you need to do is to actually introduce, first of all, the school should be run by local governments, division and district level governments. Number 2, you need to have a school board for every school, which will be composed of officials from the education ministry, some parents, and some locals, who understand education and who want to help education. And that board should keep an eye on the teachers and the training and all that. You need to have unified national curricula. This is not a syllabus, but you need to set standards. You need to have unified national testing at grade 7, grade 10, grade 12, so that you can actually measure the quality of the schools and the quality of the students. Then you need to give parents the right to opt out of the public school systems. If the schools in their area, government schools, are not good, and they want to send kids to private school, the government should be able to provide them with vouchers of 80% of the value of what they spend on that particular child's education. And then, of course, school meals. So you need to do a lot of things. We need to understand that Pakistan will not become a developed country if Pakistanis remain illiterate. If half of Pakistan cannot read or write, if 8 out of 10 kids in Pakistan are not able to read, 10-year-olds are not able to read, we cannot progress. So education is a must. And the only way, the biggest problem in Pakistan is that there is no social mobility. You know, if your father is a dhobi, you end up being a dhobi. If your father is a driver, you end up being a driver. And it's very difficult for, you know, Shahzeb and Abdullah of Pakistan to come to America unless their parents are well off. So what we want to do is to give, you know, the poorer Abdullah and Shahzeb also a chance to come up in life, and that you can only do through education. Okay, so this education you get in government schools or vouchered school, regulated private schools which are run through government vouchers should be as good, almost as good as HSN College Lahore or Karachi Grammar School or Beacon House schools, so that these kids can also compete with you guys. That's what we want.
All right, thank you, Mr. Ismail. Mr. Abbasi, do you have anything else to add?
No, I think the quality of education is very critical, and the government should take up the responsibility of delivering an equal quality of education to people across Pakistan. And we need to fix the examination system. That's been a big problem in Pakistan. The examination system has gone bad. We have so many boards, and the quality of the boards is all different. And now they've all regressed, and that's a major issue. The other issue is that we need to see this look at, which is linked to the examination system, is we have today 5 different systems of examination of schooling in Pakistan. And that has created a huge disparity in every way. We need to really seriously look at that. And we can only look at that when we have a quality examination system.
All right, thank you so much. Over to you, Shahzeb.
This would probably be the last question, sir, and one of our audience members asked that, so I will just directly quote what they have said. This is for Abbasi Saab. After your stance on the Faizabad Dharna, most were expecting that your party will be another establishment party, but your actions and post-launch stance have proven otherwise. Can you please explain where the Awam Pakistan Party stand on issues like enforced disappearance, the current war happening in KPK, and the general dominance of the establishment in private and public workings in Pakistan?
I think I've already answered that a couple of times. We have to go back to constitutional rule. Whether it is enforced disappearances, what is happening in Balochistan, what is happening in KP, what's happening all over Pakistan. We need to revert back to constitutional rule. There is no other way. There is no other way Pakistan can be held together. If there is something wrong with the constitution, let's bring it out in the open. Let's fix it. The constitution is a live document. It's not a permanent document which can never be changed. Let's change it and bring it in accordance with the needs of the people and the will of the people of Pakistan. That is the critical part. The Faizabad Dharna, I'm very clear on it. As a responsible person, when you hold a constitutional office, you must only talk, based on evidence. You cannot speculate. So my whole stance on before the commission, which I gave in writing, was based on the questions they asked me, and I gave whatever was available to me at that time. I was able to answer that.
Thank you so much, sir, for that insightful response. And Abdullah, I think you will ask the last question for our members.
Okay, there's one last question that's policy-wise, and then there's just one other question that's more of a request from the audience, and we'll get to that after this. So the last question that we're going to ask for now, and we apologize if we couldn't get to your questions. We tried to find every question. If it was similar, we tried to compile them and make a summary question. So the last question we'll ask is, you have a 5-year plan ahead of you. So can you tell us what will Awam Pakistan do to stand out electorally from the other parties, PML-N, PT, well, the former PTI and the Pakistan People's Party? How will you rally the public behind you, engagement-wise, social media-wise, etc.? What do you think about electronic voting machines and the Pakistani diaspora getting involved in elections and voting? What are your strategies and your stances on this?
Number one, we differentiate ourselves by talking about issues today. there is nobody else in Pakistan talking about issues today. If you don't talk about issues, you don't understand issues, you can never have solutions. Nobody's talking about the constitution today. The whole debate in Pakistan is about who will get power. How will I get to power? And the dilemma is that they've all been in power in the last 3 years. What have they delivered? What has changed? What will they deliver this time? What is has the thought process changed? So that's how we differentiate ourselves. Number two, we will only allow people with competence and integrity to contest elections on behalf of the party. I think that is very critical for us because Pakistan today needs these two qualities. People who do not have integrity cannot contribute to Pakistan. People who do not have competence cannot contribute to Pakistan. We've come to the end of the road, basically. We've muddled through decades of incompetence, and the integrity levels have really deteriorated. And the establishment needs to really look at the people that they put into politics and look at their integrity levels. These people who do not have integrity can not contribute anything to Pakistan. So that's how you differentiate yourselves. Again, we will talk about, we are the only people talking about issues. We're talking about principles. We're talking about democracy, about constitutional rule. And again, we are told that these messages don't sell to the common man. So what I say is that whatever the common man is facing, these are the underlying problems. If we do not fix them, slogans will not take you very far. False promises will not take you very far. So we'll go out, we'll put our message before the people. It is for them to accept or not to accept. So we are open to a debate on this narrative. We're open to whatever people want. And I think people, from what I see today, people want solutions to their problems, and I am very confident that they will respond.
Thank you so much for that response. Today's session shed light on a wide range of issues facing Pakistan, and we hope that the conversation will serve as a stimulus for future constructive and critical discourse. Our thanks go to both Mr. Abbasi and Dr. Ismail for their generous engagement with all of our questions and for taking the time to engage with young minds. I would now like to take the opportunity to thank the PSA Coalition team, without whom this event would not be possible. Thank you to Nabiha and Myra, our moderators today, for their exceptional guidance of the discussion. I would also like to thank my fellow hosts Shahid and Abdullah for navigating today's Q&A, especially with all the questions we got. Thanks also goes to the entire PSA Coalition board for the contributions and insights throughout the process. And of course, as always, we must thank Arib, the president of PSA Coalition. Thank you all again very much for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you at upcoming PSA Coalition events. Have a wonderful day. Allah Hafiz, and Pakistan Zindabad.